Sarah Mitchell sat in her wheelchair at the edge of Riverside Park, watching the morning sun filter through the oak trees. Her service dog, Buddy, a gentle golden retriever, rested his head on her lap. The park was quiet this early, just the way she liked it. Just her, Buddy, and the memories of who she used to be. 3 years ago, Sarah had been a sergeant in the United States Army. She'd served 2 tours overseas, leading her squad with courage and determination. She'd been strong, capable, and proud. Then came the explosion that changed everything. An improvised device during a routine patrol. 3 of her soldiers made it out with minor injuries. Sarah hadn't been so lucky. The doctors said she was fortunate to be alive. They said she could still have a full life, even from a wheelchair. Most days, Sarah believed them. But some days, when the phantom pains came or when people stared at her with pity in their eyes, she wondered what full really meant anymore. "Come on, boy," she said softly to Buddy, scratching behind his ears. "Let's do our loop before the park gets crowded." Buddy stood immediately, his tail wagging. He'd been with Sarah for 2 years now, specially trained to help her with daily tasks. But he was more than a service dog. He was her companion, her comfort, her reminder that she still had purpose. Sarah wheeled herself along the paved path that circled the park. Riverside was a small town in northern Virginia, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business. When Sarah had first returned home after her injury, the whole town had welcomed her as a hero. There'd been a parade, speeches, casseroles delivered to her door for weeks. But heroes, Sarah learned, had a short shelf life in people's minds. After a few months, the attention faded. People stopped asking how she was doing. They stopped seeing the soldier and only saw the wheelchair. She'd become invisible in a different way. As she rounded the bend near the playground, Sarah heard voices. Loud, entitled voices that made her instinctively tense. "This is boring," a young man's voice complained. "Why did we have to come to this dump anyway?" "Father insisted," a female voice answered. "Something about appreciating our family roots before we go back to the city, as if anything in this town matters." Sarah slowed her wheelchair. Coming toward her were 3 young people, probably in their early 20s. 2 men and 1 woman, all dressed in expensive athletic wear that looked fresh out of the package. Designer sunglasses, shoes that cost more than most people in Riverside made in a week. She recognized them vaguely. The Harrington kids. Their grandfather had founded the old textile mill that used to employ half the town before it closed. The family had moved to New York decades ago, becoming wealthy in real estate. They rarely visited anymore. Sarah tried to wheel past them, keeping her head down. She'd learned that sometimes being invisible was easier than dealing with people. "Oh my God, look," the young woman said loudly. "Is that a dog here? That's so unsanitary." Sarah kept moving, but Buddy, sensing tension, pressed closer to her wheelchair. "Excuse me," one of the young men called out. He was tall, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a smirk that Sarah immediately disliked. "Dogs aren't allowed in this park. Can't you read the signs?" Sarah stopped. She took a breath, reminding herself to stay calm. "He's a service dog," she said evenly. "Service dogs are allowed everywhere by federal law." The blonde man laughed. "Service dog, for what, fetching your tennis balls?" His friends laughed too. The sound made Sarah's stomach tighten. "He's a medical service dog," Sarah said, her voice firm but controlled. "Now if you'll excuse me." "Wait a minute." The woman stepped closer, looking Sarah up and down. "Oh, I see. You're one of those people who fakes a disability to get special treatment. My father told me about people like you. You're probably just lazy." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. Her hands gripped the wheels of her chair tightly. "I'm not faking anything," Sarah said quietly. "I served in the army. I was injured in—" "Sure you were," the second young man interrupted. He was shorter than his friend, with dark hair and cold eyes. "Everyone's got a sob story. You probably just want attention and free parking." They all laughed again. The sound echoed across the empty park. Buddy whined softly. He could sense Sarah's distress, could feel her heart rate rising. He nudged her hand with his nose, trying to comfort her. "What's wrong with your dog?" the blond man said. "Is he broken too?" "Leave us alone," Sarah said. Her voice was shaking now, not with fear but with anger. The kind of anger she'd learned to control during her military training. The kind that could be dangerous if unleashed. "Or what?" the woman taunted. "You'll run us over with your little cart." The dark-haired man suddenly stepped forward and kicked out his foot. His designer sneaker connected with Buddy's side. Not hard enough to seriously injure, but enough to make the dog yelp and jump back. "Stop it," Sarah shouted. She wheeled forward, putting herself between the men and her dog. "Don't you dare touch him." "Aw, did we hurt your feelings?" the blond man mocked. "What are you going to do about it, Wheels?" Buddy was whimpering now, pressed against Sarah's chair. She could feel him trembling. Her own hands were shaking with rage. "You have no idea who you're messing with," Sarah said, her voice low and dangerous. "Oh, we're scared," the woman said with exaggerated fear. "The cripple is threatening us. Should we call the police?" Before Sarah could respond, the dark-haired man kicked at Buddy again. This time, Sarah tried to grab his leg, but he pulled back laughing. "Touch me and I'll sue you for assault," he said. "My family has lawyers who eat people like you for breakfast." Sarah felt tears of frustration burning in her eyes. She hated that feeling. She'd faced enemy fire without crying. She'd endured surgery after surgery without tears. But this casual cruelty, this mockery of everything she'd sacrificed, broke something inside her. "Just leave us alone," she whispered. "Make us," the blond man said. He pulled out his phone. "Actually, this is hilarious. I'm going to film this. Crazy wheelchair lady threatens innocent tourists. It'll go viral." He started recording, and his friends posed mockingly behind him, making faces. Buddy suddenly barked, a sharp warning sound he rarely made. All three of the young people jumped. "Control your animal," the woman shrieked. "Or what?" Sarah said, finding her voice again. "You'll kick him again, you're all cowards. You wouldn't last 5 minutes where I've been." "We're the hospital," the dark-haired man laughed. That's when Sarah heard it, a low growl coming from the tree line beyond the playground. It wasn't Buddy. This was deeper, more primal. The rich kids heard it too. They turned toward the sound. From the shadows of the forest that bordered the park, a dog emerged. But this was unlike any dog Sarah had seen in Riverside before. It was large, possibly part wolf, with thick gray and brown fur and pale golden eyes that seemed almost human in their intelligence. The animal moved with purpose, its gaze fixed on the three young people. "What the hell is that?" the woman whispered, backing up. The dog, or wolf, or whatever it was, stepped fully into the clearing. It was magnificent and terrifying at the same time. Its lips pulled back slightly, revealing sharp white teeth. "Nice doggy," the blond man said nervously, his phone forgotten. The animal ignored him and walked straight towards Sarah and Buddy. The rich kids scrambled backward, suddenly not so brave. Sarah held her breath. This creature could tear her apart if it wanted to, but something in its eyes stopped her from being afraid. The forest dog stopped just in front of her wheelchair. It looked at Buddy first, who had stopped whimpering and was watching the larger animal with curiosity rather than fear. Then it turned those golden eyes to Sarah. For a long moment they simply looked at each other. Sarah felt something pass between them, an understanding she couldn't explain. This animal knew pain. It knew survival. It recognized something in her. Then the forest dog turned toward the three rich kids, who were now huddled together near the playground. The forest dog moved slowly, deliberately, toward the three young people. Each step was measured, controlled. This wasn't a wild animal acting on instinct. This was something else entirely. "Get it away from us," the woman screamed. She grabbed the blond man's arm, trying to hide behind him. Do something, the dark-haired man yelled at Sarah. Call it off. Sarah didn't move. She watched the scene unfold with a strange sense of calm. The forest dog wasn't attacking. It was hurting them, backing them against the playground fence. It's not my dog, Sarah said simply. The blond man pulled out his phone again, but his hands were shaking so badly he dropped it. I'm calling animal control, the police. This thing is dangerous. The forest dog stopped about 10 feet from them and sat down. Just sat, like Buddy did when Sarah commanded him. But its eyes never left the three people pressed against the fence. Please, the woman whimpered. We're sorry, just make it go away. Sorry, Sarah wheeled closer. Not too close to the forest dog, but close enough that her voice carried clearly. You're sorry now. 5 minutes ago, you were kicking my dog and mocking my service to this country. We didn't mean it, the dark-haired man said quickly. We were just joking around. Joking, Sarah repeated. The word felt bitter in her mouth. You know what's funny? I lost the use of my legs saving people like you. People who were too scared or too privileged to serve themselves. I took shrapnel mint for my squad. 3 of them went home to their families because I put my body between them and an explosive device. The 3 rich kids stared at her. The mockery was gone from their faces now, replaced by fear. But Sarah wasn't sure if they feared the forest dog or the truth in her words. I spent 8 months learning to live again, Sarah continued. Her voice was steady now, strong. Learning to dress myself, feed myself, accept that I'd never walk again. And you know what kept me going? The belief that I'd served with honor, that I'd made a difference, that people would understand the sacrifice. We understand, the blond man said quickly. We're really sorry, just please. You don't understand anything, Sarah cut him off. You see this wheelchair and think it makes me less. You see Buddy and think he's just a pet. You don't see the courage it takes to leave my house every day, knowing people like you will stare and whisper and judge. The forest dog made a sound, not quite a growl but a low rumble that vibrated in its chest. The 3 young people pressed even harder against the fence. What do you want? The woman asked, tears running down her carefully made-up face. Money, we have money. Our families can pay. I don't want your money, Sarah said. She was surprised by how calm she felt. The anger that had been burning in her chest earlier had transformed into something else. Clarity. I want you to understand what you did, to really understand. The dark-haired man's phone buzzed. He jumped, then carefully pulled it out. It's my father, he whispered. He's asking where we are. The town's ceremony starts in an hour. Ceremony? Sarah asked. The Harrington Foundation is donating money to renovate the old community center, the blond man explained quickly, eager to change the subject. Making it accessible for people with disabilities. Ramps, elevators, the whole thing. That's why we're in town, for the announcement. Sarah almost laughed at the irony. So your family donates money for accessibility while you mock someone in a wheelchair. The woman sobbed. Please, if our father finds out what we did, if anyone finds out, it'll ruin everything. The foundation, the family reputation, please. The forest dog stood up. The movement was so sudden that all 3 rich kids gasped. But the animal didn't move toward them. Instead, it walked back to Sarah, circling her wheelchair once before sitting beside Buddy. The 2 dogs, domestic and wild, sat side by side. Buddy's tail wagged slowly. The forest dog remained still, watchful. Sarah looked at the 3 young people cowering against the fence. They were pathetic now, all their arrogance stripped away. Part of her wanted to let them suffer, to expose them for what they really were, but she'd been a leader once. She'd learned that true strength wasn't about revenge. Here's what's going to happen, Sarah said. You're going to that ceremony. You're going to smile for the cameras and pretend to care about accessibility. And then you're going to actually care. What do you mean? The blond man asked. I mean you're going to volunteer at the Veterans Hospital, Sarah said. Every week for the next 6 months. You're going to meet real people with real disabilities. You're going to listen to their stories. You're going to learn why service dogs are important. And you're going to understand what sacrifice actually means. Our father will never agree to that, the woman said. Then I guess he'll find out what his children did in the park today, Sarah replied. I may not have recorded it, but I have a feeling this incident will get around town. Riverside is small, people talk, and people love their local hero even if they don't always show it. The three exchanged glances. They knew she was right. Fine, the dark-haired man said. We'll do it. We'll volunteer. Just please don't tell anyone what happened. I'm not promising anything, Sarah said. But if you actually follow through, if you actually learn something and change, then maybe your secret stays safe. The forest dog stood again and moved away from Sarah, heading back toward the tree line. It paused once, looking back at her with those intelligent golden eyes. Then it disappeared into the shadows as silently as it had appeared. The spell was broken. The three rich kids stood up straight, adjusting their expensive clothes. Some of their old arrogance crept back into their expressions. We should go, the blond man said. The ceremony. They started to walk away. Then the woman turned back. What you said about serving, she said quietly. About saving your squad, was that all true? Sarah nodded, every word. I didn't know, the woman said. I didn't know what soldiers actually do, what they sacrifice. I just saw the wheelchair. That's the problem, Sarah said. People see what they want to see. They don't ask questions. They don't try to understand. The woman nodded slowly, then hurried after her companions. Sarah sat in her wheelchair watching them go. Buddy nudged her hand, and she scratched his head absently. What do you think, boy? She asked. Did we do the right thing? Buddy barked softly, as if in agreement. Sarah wheeled toward the tree line where the forest dog had disappeared. There was no sign of it now. She wondered if she'd imagined the whole thing, if stress had made her hallucinate. But Buddy had seen it too. The rich kids had seen it. Thank you, she called into the trees, not knowing if the creature could hear her. Whoever you are, wherever you came from, thank you. The wind rustled through the leaves, and Sarah could have sworn she heard a howl in the distance. But maybe it was just her imagination. She started wheeling back toward the parking lot where her specially modified van waited. She needed to get home, process what had happened. But as she moved, she noticed a man standing near the park entrance. He was older, maybe in his 60s, with gray hair and a weathered face. He wore simple clothes, a flannel shirt and jeans. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Excuse me, he called out as she approached. I don't mean to bother you, but I saw what happened back there, with those kids and the dog. Sarah tensed. It's handled. I'm sure it is, the man said with a slight smile. I just wanted to say thank you. Those Harrington kids have been causing trouble all weekend. Someone needed to put them in their place. You know them. Know their family, he said. Old money, no manners, think the world owes them everything. He paused. I also wanted to say thank you for your service. I was in the army too. Vietnam. Different war, same sacrifice. Sarah felt her throat tighten. Thank you. That dog that showed up, the man continued, his eyes distant. The big one from the forest, I've seen it before. Years ago when I first came back from the war. I was in a bad place, drinking too much, angry at everyone. One night I went into those woods thinking I wouldn't come back out. He looked at Sarah directly now. That dog found me, just sat with me all night like it knew I needed company. When morning came, I felt different, stronger, like I could face another day. I've seen it a few times over the years, always when someone needs help. What is it? Sarah asked. The man shrugged. Some folks say it's the ghost of an old wolf that used to protect this area. Others think it's just a wild dog that's smarter than most. I think it's a reminder. Of what? That we're not alone, he said simply. That even when we feel invisible or forgotten, something out there still sees us, still knows our worth." Sarah felt tears prickling her eyes again, but this time they weren't tears of frustration. "I'm Jack, by the way," the man said. "Jack Patterson. I run the veteran support group that meets at the community center on Thursdays, if you're ever interested. We'd love to have you." "I might take you up on that," Sarah said. Jack tipped an imaginary hat and walked away. Sarah sat for a moment watching him go. Then she looked at Buddy. "Come on, boy, let's go home." As she drove through town, Sarah noticed things she hadn't paid attention to in months. The American flag flying outside the post office, the memorial plaque for local veterans at the town square, the small signs in shop windows that said military discount available. She'd been so focused on what she'd lost that she'd forgotten what she still had. A community that cared, even if they didn't always show it well. A purpose, even if it was different from before. And now, maybe, a chance to make a real difference. The rich kids would volunteer at the hospital. They'd learn about sacrifice and service. And maybe, just maybe, they'd become better people. The Riverside Community Center stood in the middle of town, a brick building that had seen better days. Its paint was peeling, the ramp at the entrance was cracked, and the elevator hadn't worked in 5 years. But in 2 hours, it would be the center of attention as the Harrington Foundation announced its donation to renovate the entire facility. Sarah wheeled herself through the side entrance, Buddy trotting faithfully beside her. She debated coming to the ceremony. Part of her wanted to avoid the rich kids entirely, but Jack Patterson had called that morning, asking if she'd attend. He was receiving an award for his work with local veterans, and he wanted her there. "You represent the new generation," Jack had said. "The young people who served, they need to see you." The main hall was already filling with people. Sarah recognized many faces from town. The mayor, shop owners, teachers from the local high school. And there, near the front, stood the 3 Harrington kids with an older man who could only be their father. Richard Harrington was tall and distinguished, with silver hair and an expensive suit. He had the same entitled bearing as his children, but tempered with years of practice at appearing humble. He was currently shaking hands with the mayor, his smile perfect for the cameras that were being set up. The blond son noticed Sarah first. His face went pale. He whispered something to his siblings and they all turned to look at her. Fear flashed across their features. Sarah wheeled to a spot near the back, where she could see but wouldn't be noticed. She wasn't here to cause trouble. She just wanted to see how this played out. "Sarah," Jack appeared beside her, looking sharp in a suit jacket over his usual jeans. "You came, I'm glad." "Wouldn't miss it," Sarah said. "Congratulations on the award." Jack waved dismissively. "It's nothing, just a little recognition. The real work is what you did, what all of you did serving overseas." The ceremony began with the mayor welcoming everyone and talking about the history of the community center. Then Richard Harrington took the stage. He spoke eloquently about giving back to the community, about the importance of accessibility, about honoring those who had sacrificed for their country. Sarah watched the 3 kids standing behind their father. They looked uncomfortable, shifting their weight, avoiding eye contact with the crowd. "And now," Richard said, "I'd like to invite a special guest to the stage. Jack Patterson has served this community for 40 years, helping veterans transition back to civilian life. Jack, please come up." As Jack made his way to the stage, Sarah noticed something. The woman, the one from the park, kept looking back at her, not with the mockery from before but with something else. Guilt, shame, Sarah couldn't tell. Jack gave a short speech, thanking the community and talking about the importance of supporting veterans. "We send our young people to war," he said, his voice strong, "and when they come home changed, we owe them more than just a thank you. We owe them understanding, support, and opportunities to continue serving in new ways." The crowd applauded. Richard presented Jack with a plaque and they posed for photos. Then something unexpected happened. The dark-haired son stepped forward and whispered something to his father. Richard looked surprised, then nodded. The young man approached the microphone. "Excuse me," he said, his voice uncertain. "I'd like to say something if that's okay." Richard looked puzzled but stepped aside. "My name is David Harrington," the young man said. "And this morning I learned something important about myself. I learned that I'm ignorant." A murmur went through the crowd. Sarah sat up straighter. "My brother, my sister, and I came to this town thinking we were better than everyone here," David continued. His hands were shaking slightly. "We thought that because our family has money and lives in the city, that made us superior. And this morning, we took that attitude out on someone who deserved our respect, not our mockery." Sarah's heart started beating faster. What was he doing? "We encountered a veteran in the park," David said. "A woman in a wheelchair with a service dog. And instead of thanking her for her service, instead of showing any kind of human decency, we insulted her. We mocked her disability. My brother even kicked her dog." Gasps echoed through the hall. Richard Harrington's face turned red. The cameras swiveled toward David. "I'm not telling you this to be praised for my honesty," David said. "I'm telling you because I realize something. If we're going to donate money to make this building accessible, we need to actually understand why that matters. We need to understand the people we're supposedly helping." He paused, taking a deep breath. The woman in the park was Sergeant Sarah Mitchell. She lost the use of her legs serving in Afghanistan. She saved 3 members of her squad by putting herself between them and an explosive device. She's a hero, and we treated her like she was nothing. The room was completely silent now. Sarah felt every eye in the place searching for her. She wanted to disappear, to wheel out the door and never come back, but something kept her in place. "Sarah," David said, looking directly at her now, "I know you're here. I saw you come in. And I want to say in front of everyone that I'm sorry. We're sorry. What we did was unforgivable, but you gave us a chance to do better and we're going to take it." Richard Harrington stepped forward, confusion and anger warring on his face. "David, what are you?" "Father, please," David interrupted. "This is important." He turned back to the crowd. "My siblings and I have committed to volunteering at the Veterans Hospital for the next 6 months. We're going to learn about real sacrifice, real service, and we're going to try to become better people." The blond brother stepped forward next, taking the microphone. "My name is Christopher Harrington," he said, "and everything David said is true. I was the one who kicked Sergeant Mitchell's service dog. I'm ashamed of what I did. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want everyone to know that we're going to change." Finally, the sister approached. "I'm Amanda Harrington," she said softly, "and I was the cruelest of all. I said things I can't take back. Things that hurt someone who had already given so much, but I promise we're going to learn. We're going to do better." Richard Harrington stood frozen, clearly blindsided by his children's confession. The mayor looked equally shocked, but Jack Patterson was smiling. He walked to the microphone. "I think," he said, "that we just witnessed something more valuable than any donation. We witnessed 3 young people taking responsibility for their actions. That takes real courage." He gestured toward Sarah. "Sergeant Mitchell, would you be willing to come up here?" Sarah's first instinct was to refuse, but Buddy nudged her hand and she looked into his trusting eyes. She'd faced enemy fire. She could face a crowd of her own neighbors. She wheeled herself forward. The crowd parted to let her through. When she reached the stage, Jack helped position her wheelchair beside the microphone. Sarah looked out at the sea of faces. Some she knew well, others she barely recognized. All of them were watching her with a mixture of curiosity and respect. "I don't really know what to say," Sarah began. Her voice sounded small in the large space, so she cleared her throat and tried again. "I didn't come here today expecting any of this." She glanced at the 3 Harrington kids, who stood to the side looking both terrified and relieved. "This morning in the park was hard," Sarah continued. It brought up a lot of feelings I've been trying to ignore. Since I came home, I've felt invisible, like people don't see me anymore, they just see the wheelchair. Or they see me and don't know what to say, so they say nothing at all. Several people in the crowd nodded, and Sarah saw understanding in their eyes. But what happened today reminded me of something important, Sarah said. People can change, people can learn, and sometimes the hardest lessons come from the most unexpected places. She turned to the Harrington kids. I accept your apology, and I'm going to hold you to your promise. I'll be at the Veterans Hospital every week, and I expect to see all three of you there. You will, Amanda said firmly. We promise. Richard Harrington finally found his voice. Sergeant Mitchell, he said, approaching carefully. I had no idea what my children had done. I'm appalled by their behavior. Please know that I will personally ensure they follow through on their commitment. See that you do, Sarah said. Then more gently, and maybe you could join them sometimes. It might be good for all of you. Richard looked surprised, then thoughtful. Perhaps I will. The mayor stepped forward, seizing the moment. Sergeant Mitchell, I wonder if you'd be willing to serve on the committee for the community center renovation. We need someone who can provide real insight into what accessibility truly means. Sarah hadn't expected that. I'm not an expert. You're exactly the expert we need, Jack interrupted. You live it every day. Sarah looked at the crowd again. She saw acceptance there, support, maybe even admiration. When had that changed? Or had it always been there and she'd just been too hurt to notice? Okay, she said, I'll do it. The applause was thunderous. Sarah felt tears on her cheeks and didn't bother to wipe them away. As the ceremony wrapped up and people began mingling, Sarah found herself surrounded. Veterans she hadn't seen in years came to shake her hand. Store owners promised her discounts. The local newspaper wanted an interview. But the most meaningful moment came when Amanda Harrington approached, her own eyes red from crying. Thank you, Amanda said simply, for giving us a second chance. Everyone deserves a second chance, Sarah replied. What matters is what you do with it. Amanda nodded. Can I ask you something? That dog in the forest, the one that protected you, what was it? Sarah smiled. I'm not entirely sure, but I think it was a reminder. Of what? That there's still good in the world, still protection when we need it, still hope, even when things seem darkest. Amanda thought about that. I'd like to believe that. Then believe it, Sarah said. As the evening wound down and people began to leave, Jack walked Sarah to her van. You did good today, he said. I didn't do anything, Sarah protested. Those kids confessed on their own. You gave them the courage to do it, Jack said, by showing them what real strength looks like. Not arrogance, not cruelty, but grace under pressure. Sarah loaded Buddy into the van and positioned her wheelchair on the lift. Before getting in, she looked back at the community center. It's going to be good when it's finished, she said. Really accessible, a place where everyone feels welcome. It already is, Jack said, because of people like you. As Sarah drove home through the darkening streets of Riverside, she felt different, lighter somehow. The anger and hurt she'd been carrying for so long had loosened its grip. She thought about the forest dog, wondered if she'd ever see it again. Probably not. Things like that appeared when they were needed and disappeared when their work was done. But the memory would stay with her, a reminder that she was stronger than she knew, that her service hadn't ended with her injury, it had just taken a new form. Tomorrow, she'd call the Veterans Hospital and set up the volunteer schedule for the Harrington kids. Next week, she'd attend her first committee meeting for the community center renovation. And the week after that, she'd go to Jack's support group and share her story. Life was beginning again, different from before but no less valuable. As she pulled into her driveway, Sarah could have sworn she saw a shadow moving at the edge of the woods behind her house. Large and four-legged, with eyes that caught the moonlight. She smiled. "Thank you," she whispered into the night. The shadow melted away, but Sarah knew it would return when someone else needed it, when another person felt lost or forgotten or alone. That's what guardians do. They watch, they wait, and they appear exactly when they're needed most. 3 months had passed since the incident in the park, and Riverside had transformed in ways both visible and invisible. The community center renovation was well underway, with Sarah serving as the accessibility consultant. She met with the contractors weekly, pointing out things they'd never considered: the height of door handles, the width of hallways, the placement of elevators. But the bigger transformation was happening at the Veterans Hospital on the outskirts of town. Every Thursday afternoon, Sarah wheeled herself through the hospital's automatic doors and headed to the recreation room. And every Thursday, without fail, the 3 Harrington kids were already there waiting. At first, they'd been awkward and uncertain. David didn't know how to talk to the elderly veteran who'd lost both legs in Vietnam. Christopher fumbled when trying to help a young Marine who'd suffered a traumatic brain injury. Amanda had actually cried the first time she met a woman who'd been blinded by an IED. But they kept coming, and slowly they learned. Sarah watched them now from the doorway. Christopher was playing chess with Mr. Martinez, a Korean War veteran who loved to talk about his grandchildren. David was reading aloud to a group of veterans who had difficulty seeing. And Amanda was in the corner with Lisa, a young Army specialist who'd lost her right arm, teaching her how to paint with her left hand. "They've come a long way," a voice said beside Sarah. She turned to see Dr. Rachel Kim, the hospital's director. They'd become friends over the past months. "They have," Sarah agreed. "When they first started, I wasn't sure they'd make it past the first week. Too hard, too real." "What changed?" Sarah thought about it. "I think they started listening, really listening to the stories, and they realized that these weren't just damaged people to feel sorry for. These were whole people who'd experienced something terrible and were finding ways to keep living." "Like you," Rachel said gently. "Like all of us," Sarah corrected. Amanda noticed Sarah and waved her over. Sarah wheeled across the room, Buddy padding beside her. "Sarah, look what Lisa made," Amanda said excitedly. She held up a watercolor painting of a sunset. The brushstrokes were uncertain but bold, the colors vibrant. "It's beautiful," Sarah said sincerely. Lisa beamed. "Amanda's been teaching me. She says I have natural talent." "She does," Amanda confirmed. "I was telling her she should submit some pieces to the art show the community center is planning for the grand reopening." "You should definitely do that," Sarah said. As Lisa went back to painting, Amanda pulled Sarah aside. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How do you do it?" Amanda's voice was quiet, intense. "How do you stay positive after everything you've lost, everything you've been through?" Sarah considered the question. It was one she'd asked herself 1,000 times. "I don't always stay positive," she said honestly. "Some days are hard. Some days I wake up and the first thing I think about is what I can't do anymore. But then I remember what I can still do." "Like what?" "Like make a difference," Sarah said. "Like help you 3 become better people. Like advise on the community center so it's truly accessible. Like show other veterans that life doesn't end when your body changes." Amanda nodded slowly. "I used to think helping people meant writing a check, just donate money and move on. But it's not that simple, is it?" "Money helps," Sarah said. "It builds ramps and buys equipment. But real help is about presence, about showing up and listening and caring." "I'm starting to understand that," Amanda said. She glanced back at Lisa. "She told me her story last week, about the attack that cost her arm, about how she felt worthless afterward, like she had nothing to offer the world. And I realized I'd felt the same way about her when we first met. I'd seen the missing arm and assumed she was broken. But she's not." "No," Amanda said firmly. "She's amazing. She's funny and smart and talented. The missing arm is just one fact about her, not the only fact." Sarah smiled. "Now you're getting it." Across the room, David approached with Mr. Martinez. The elderly veteran was using a walker, moving slowly but determinedly. "Sergeant Mitchell," Mr. Martinez said formally, "I wanted to thank you for sending these young people our way. They've brought life back to this place." "They've brought themselves," Sarah said. "I just pointed them in the right direction." "But David here tells me he's thinking about becoming a physical therapist," Mr. Martinez continued. "Says he wants to help veterans recover their mobility." Sarah looked at David in surprise. "Really?" David's cheeks reddened. "I've been researching it. I'm starting classes in the fall. It'll take years, but I figure if I'm going to do something with my life, it should matter." "That's wonderful," Sarah said, and she meant it. "Christopher's planning to become a veterinarian," David added, "specializing in service animals. And Amanda's applying to art therapy programs," Mr. Martinez said with a proud smile. "These kids are going to change the world." After the hospital visit, Sarah drove to the community center. The renovation was nearly complete, and today was the final walkthrough before the grand reopening scheduled for next week. Jack was already there, examining the new ramps. "What do you think?" he asked as Sarah wheeled up beside him. "It's perfect," Sarah said. The ramp had the exact right incline, with sturdy handrails on both sides. The surface was textured to prevent slipping but smooth enough for easy wheeling. "Did they follow the specifications exactly?" "To the letter," Jack confirmed. "Come see the inside." The interior was transformed. Wide doorways, an elevator that actually worked, bathrooms designed for wheelchair access, meeting rooms with adjustable tables, a kitchen with lowered counters. But Sarah's favorite addition was the wall near the entrance. It was covered with photos and names of local veterans from every war and conflict. Her own photo was there, in her dress uniform from before her injury, looking young and proud and whole. "The Wall of Honor," Jack said. "The mayor's idea, every veteran from Riverside, past and present, so no one forgets their service." Sarah studied the wall. There was Mr. Martinez from Korea, Jack from Vietnam, dozens of others from Desert Storm, Iraq, Afghanistan, some she knew. Others had served before she was born, all connected by the same thread of sacrifice. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "There's going to be a dedication ceremony at the grand reopening," Jack said. "The mayor wants you to speak." Sarah's stomach clenched. "Jack, I don't know." "You know exactly what to say," Jack interrupted gently. "You've been saying it for months in your actions, in how you've mentored those Harrington kids, in how you've served on this committee, in how you've lived your life with dignity and purpose. What if I mess it up?" Jack laughed. "Sarah, you led soldiers in combat. You survived an explosion that would have killed most people. You faced down 3 entitled brats and turned them into caring human beings. I think you can handle a speech." Sarah smiled despite her nervousness. "When you put it that way." "Besides," Jack added, "you won't be alone. The whole town will be there supporting you." As if summoned by his words, Sarah's phone buzzed. It was a text from Amanda. "Can we meet for coffee tomorrow? I want to ask your advice about something." Another text came in, this one from the mayor. "Final headcount for the reopening is 350 people. We're going to need a bigger venue." And another from Rachel at the hospital. "Lisa wants to know if you'll pose for a portrait. She's entering it in the community center art show." Sarah looked at her phone, at these messages from people who had become important to her. 3 months ago, she'd felt invisible, forgotten. Now she was at the center of a web of connection and purpose. "Okay," she said to Jack, "I'll give the speech." "Excellent," Jack said. "Now, there's one more thing I want to show you." He led her to a room at the back of the community center. It was large and open, with windows overlooking the park. There were comfortable chairs, shelves for books, a kitchenette. "This is the new home for our veteran support group," Jack explained. "But I was thinking it could be more. A drop-in center, a place where veterans can come any time, day or night, just to be around people who understand." "Jack, that's a wonderful idea. I want you to help me run it," Jack said. "Co-facilitate the meetings, be a mentor for younger veterans, share your story." Sarah felt overwhelmed by the offer. "I'm not qualified." "You're the most qualified person I know," Jack said firmly. "You've lived it, you're still living it, and you found a way to turn your pain into purpose. That's exactly what other veterans need to see." Through the window, Sarah could see the park where everything had changed, the playground where the rich kids had cornered her, the path she'd been wheeling down when Buddy was kicked, the tree line where the forest dog had emerged. "I haven't seen it since that day," Sarah said quietly. "The forest dog." "Maybe you don't need to," Jack suggested. "Maybe it showed up when you needed it most, and now you're strong enough to stand on your own." "I'm in a wheelchair," Sarah pointed out with a wry smile. Jack laughed. "You know what I mean, strong in the ways that matter." That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the speech she'd have to give, about all the people who would be watching. She thought about the Harrington kids and how far they'd come, about the veterans at the hospital who inspired her every week, about Jack and his quiet wisdom, about the forest dog and its mysterious protection. At 2 in the morning, she gave up on sleeping and wheeled herself to her home office. She opened her laptop and started writing. The words came slowly at first, then faster. She wrote about service and sacrifice, about loss and transformation, about finding purpose in unexpected places, about the importance of community and second chances. She wrote until dawn, until Buddy nudged her hand to remind her it was time for his morning walk. As she wheeled through her neighborhood in the early morning light, Sarah noticed things she'd taken for granted. The way Mr. Johnson always waved from his porch. How Mrs. Chen left fresh vegetables from her garden on Sarah's doorstep. The way the kids riding their bikes to school always stopped to pet Buddy. She'd thought she was invisible, but she'd been wrong. People saw her. They just hadn't known how to show it. The week passed in a blur of preparations. The Harrington kids wanted to help with the grand reopening, so Sarah put them to work. David coordinated the parking, ensuring there were enough accessible spaces. Christopher organized a service dog demonstration with Buddy and several other working dogs. Amanda curated the art show, featuring Lisa's work prominently. Richard Harrington had kept his promise too. He'd started volunteering at the hospital, joining his children every Thursday. Sarah had watched him transform from a distant, arrogant businessman into someone who genuinely cared. He'd funded scholarships for veterans pursuing education and had started a program to help businesses make their facilities more accessible. On the morning of the grand reopening, Sarah woke to find a package on her doorstep. Inside was a dress uniform that had been specially tailored to accommodate her seated position. There was a note from the Army. "You served with honor. You should be honored in return." Sarah's hands shook as she put on the uniform. She hadn't worn it since before her injury, but looking at herself in the mirror, she felt something shift inside her. She was still a soldier, still serving, just in a different way. The community center was packed when she arrived. 350 people, just as the mayor had predicted. Veterans, families, town officials, local business owners. The Harrington family sat in the front row, all 4 of them. And there, standing near the back, was a man Sarah had never seen before. He was younger than Jack, maybe in his 40s, and he watched the proceedings with the same sharp awareness Sarah had learned in her military training. During the ceremony, after the mayor's speech and the ribbon cutting and the tour of the facilities, it was Sarah's turn to speak. She wheeled to the podium, Buddy beside her. The crowd fell silent. "3 months ago," Sarah began, her voice steady, "I came to the park near this building and had one of the worst experiences of my life. I was mocked for my disability. My service dog was kicked. I felt invisible and worthless. She paused, looking at the Harrington kids. They were watching her with rapt attention. But that terrible moment led to something beautiful. It led to change. Real change, not just in a building but in people's hearts. Sarah went on to tell the story of what had happened, leaving out the part about the forest dog but emphasizing the transformation of David, Christopher, and Amanda. She talked about the importance of accessibility, not just in buildings but in attitudes. She spoke about the veteran community and the need for ongoing support. "We like to thank veterans for their service," Sarah said, "and those thanks are appreciated, but what we really need is understanding. We need jobs that accommodate our abilities. We need buildings we can access. We need communities that see us as whole people, not broken soldiers. We need purpose." Her voice grew stronger. "This community center represents all of that. It's accessible, it's welcoming, and it's going to serve as a hub for veterans and their families. But more than that, it's a symbol of what's possible when people decide to do better, when they decide to listen and learn and change." The applause started before she finished. It swelled through the room, overwhelming in its enthusiasm. People stood, a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. When it finally quieted, Amanda Harrington stood up. "Sergeant Mitchell, may I say something?" Sarah nodded, surprised. Amanda made her way to the microphone. "I want to thank you," she said simply, "not just for forgiving us but for showing us who we could become. You took 3 spoiled, ignorant kids and turned us into people who care, who want to make a difference. That's a kind of service, too." David and Christopher joined her. Together, the 3 of them faced the crowd. "We're announcing today that the Harrington Foundation is establishing a permanent fund for veteran services," David said. "It will provide scholarships, medical support, housing assistance, and employment opportunities for veterans in need. And we're personally committing to continue our work at the Veterans Hospital," Christopher added. "Not just for 6 months, but indefinitely. Because we've learned that this isn't about fulfilling an obligation. It's about being part of a community." The crowd erupted again. Richard Harrington stood, pride evident on his face. He joined his children at the microphone. "My children have taught me more in 3 months than I learned in 60 years, he said. "They've shown me that real wealth isn't measured in money but in impact, in changed lives, in purpose served. I'm proud of them. And I'm grateful to Sergeant Mitchell for giving us all, a second chance." As the official ceremony concluded and people began mingling, Sarah found herself surrounded once again. But this time, instead of feeling overwhelmed, she felt embraced. The stranger from the back of the room approached. Up close, Sarah could see scars on his face and hands, combat scars. "Sergeant Mitchell," he said, "I'm Captain James Walker. I served in Afghanistan too, different unit. I heard about what you did for your squad, about the sacrifice you made." "I was just doing my job," Sarah said automatically. "No," James said firmly. "You went above and beyond, and now you're doing it again here at home. I run a national veterans advocacy organization. We'd like to feature your story in our newsletter. Show other veterans that life continues after injury, that purpose continues." Sarah hesitated. "I'm not special. There are thousands of veterans doing amazing things." "That's exactly right," James interrupted. "And you're one of them. Your story matters, Sarah. Let us share it." Before Sarah could respond, she felt a familiar presence. She turned to see Jack standing nearby, smiling knowingly. "You should do it," Jack said. "Your voice needs to be heard." That evening, after the crowds had dispersed and the community center had emptied, Sarah sat alone in the new Veterans Lounge. Buddy dozed at her feet. Through the window, she could see the park bathed in moonlight. And there, at the edge of the tree line, stood the forest dog. Sarah's breath caught. It had been months. She'd thought she'd never see it again. The creature stood motionless, its golden eyes reflecting the light from the community center. It watched Sarah for a long moment, and Sarah watched back. Then slowly, deliberately, the forest dog dipped its head in what could only be described as a nod, a gesture of acknowledgement, of approval. Sarah raised her hand in a small wave. The forest dog turned and melted back into the shadows, disappearing as silently as it had appeared all those months ago. Sarah sat in the quiet room, a sense of peace settling over her. The forest dog had been her guardian when she needed one most. It had appeared when she was at her lowest, reminding her of her strength. And now it had returned one last time, not to protect her, but to acknowledge that she no longer needed protecting. She was strong enough now. She had found her purpose. She had built her community. She was no longer invisible. "Thank you," Sarah whispered into the darkness, "for everything." Buddy stirred and looked up at her, his tail wagging. "Come on, boy," Sarah said, scratching his ears. "Let's go home." As she wheeled out of the community center, Sarah took one last look at the wall of honor. Her photo hung there among dozens of others, a testament to service and sacrifice. But it wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. Tomorrow, she would start co-facilitating the veteran support group with Jack. Next week, she would meet with Captain Walker about the newsletter feature. Next month, she would start teaching a class at the community college about disability awareness. The work continued. The service continued, just in a different form. Sarah drove home through the quiet streets of Riverside, her town, her community, the place where she had been lost and had found herself again. In the distance, she heard a howl, not threatening but triumphant, a sound of wildness and freedom and strength. Sarah smiled. Some guardians protect with their presence. Others protect by teaching us to protect ourselves. The forest dog had done both. And now, Sarah realized, she could be that guardian for others. For the Harrington kids as they continued their journey of transformation. For veterans struggling to find their place in civilian life. For anyone who felt invisible or forgotten or less than whole. She had been given a second chance at purpose, and she wasn't going to waste it. As Sarah pulled into her driveway, she noticed something on her doorstep. A small wooden carving of a wolf, beautifully detailed, with golden paint on its eyes. There was no note, no explanation. Sarah picked it up, running her fingers over the smooth wood. She didn't know who had left it. Maybe Jack, maybe one of the veterans from the hospital. Maybe it had been there all along and she'd simply never noticed. Or maybe it was a reminder that some mysteries don't need solving. Some magic doesn't need explaining. Sarah wheeled into her house, the wooden wolf cradled in her lap. She placed it on her mantle where she could see it every day. A reminder of strength, of protection, of second chances. Of the truth that we are never truly alone, even when we feel most invisible. The forest watches, the community cares, and purpose waits, ready to be discovered in the most unexpected places. Sarah Mitchell had been a soldier, she had been wounded, she had been lost. But now she was something more. She was a guardian herself, a mentor, a leader, a voice for those who felt voiceless. And that was worth more than anything she had lost. That night Sarah slept peacefully for the first time in years. And in her dreams, she ran through forests on strong legs, a pack of wolves running beside her, howling their joy to the moon.